Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for joining the last of EarthShift Global's Spring Brown Bag series. We're pleased to have Leanne Krasinski from Waste Management here with us today from the greater Chicago area. Leanne is a Senior Associate with the Waste Management Sustainability Services Consulting Group. In her 6 years with Waste Management, she's worked with a wide variety of organizations from manufacturers to universities to grocers and retailers to help create and implement sustainable solutions that drive value throughout the organization. And without further ado, I would like to invite Leanne to join us here. Please share your screen now.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Holly, for the introduction. As Holly mentioned, my name is Leanne Krasinski, and I am a Senior Associate with Waste Management Sustainability Services Consulting Group. I understand that we've got some folks from outside the U.S. participating today, possibly, and so just for anyone's benefit that isn't already familiar, Waste Management is North America's largest provider of environmental services. We offer solutions ranging from refuse hauling and disposal to recycling services to organics diversion and other types of material management services. We also own and operate a network of landfills, transfer stations, material recovery facilities or recycling sorting facilities, and organics processing facilities. And we also work with a large network of third-party vendors that provide similar services so that we can deliver the solutions that our customers need regardless of their geographic location. So that's a little bit about waste management writ large. As Holly mentioned, I work with a division of Waste Management called the Sustainability Services Consulting Group. We are a full-service consultancy that prides itself on maximizing performance and delivering return on investment to our clients. And we do this by creating customized solutions that help them to achieve their sustainability goals. So not only do we believe that we've got a good deal of in-house expertise, but we're also operating with the benefit of all the institutional knowledge and resources that Waste Management has to offer. And we believe that that presents an advantage to our clients. They can be confident that we're going to deliver results because our group has a very thorough understanding of how waste can impact business. And that's not just waste in the traditional sense, it could also be wasted time, money, raw materials, etc. So as I said, we believe our advantage lies in our deep knowledge of the industry, along with our unique position within the waste management umbrella. Other haulers don't necessarily have the capability to develop creative solutions for their customers outside their core service offerings. And a lot of other consultancies don't necessarily have the capability to implement those solutions that they might be recommending. And in contrast, we're able to take our expertise and combine it with Waste Management's analytics as well as their boots on the ground or operational support capabilities so that we can both identify and implement customized strategies and programs for our clients. So here's a little bit more about our team. We're made up of experts from a diverse set of backgrounds and disciplines, possessing a wide array of certifications and credentials that are listed on the slide, some examples being LEED, Well Building, Lean Six Sigma, CHMM, True Zero Waste, et cetera, et cetera. And we believe that our diversity of perspective ensures that we can use a multifaceted approach to developing creative solutions for our clients, which are generally distributed across the 5 practice areas outlined on the slide. And I'll go over each of those in a little bit more detail. So beginning with sustainable enterprise strategy, in this practice, we strive to help organizations explore the gap between where they're at and where they'd like to be with regard to sustainability, and we help them to develop a roadmap to achieve those goals and to close that gap. collaboration and innovation. In this practice, we conduct sustainable innovation workshops where we explore how we can build strategic partnerships to help our clients drive success. In this practice, we also help retailers and manufacturers design products and packaging that reduce the burden of disposal and help to back up any recyclability claims that they'd like to make. And we do this through a rigorous testing process that provides transparency and helps our clients to avoid any greenwashing accusations. Sustainable performance analytics and reporting. In this practice, we routinely leverage our sustainability expertise and our advanced business intelligence platform, which we have branded Inspire, to help drive value for our clients, whether it be through corporate sustainability reporting or reporting to external organizations like CDP or Dow Jones. We believe that our ability to provide data-driven reporting helps deliver the transparency that stakeholders will be increasingly demanding of our clients. And then in program design, implementation, and management, we merge strategy with our clients' business operations. Our expertise here is in understanding change management to help clients get from point A to point B and to gain that all-important buy-in from their stakeholders. And then finally, we can also help organizations achieve a number of sustainability-related certifications, including True or UL Environment Zero Waste, WELL, GRESB, BOMA, LEED, or even Council for Responsible Sport if they happen to be a sporting event organizer. In this area, we can help clients achieve certain components of certification or credits, or we can act as their partner to help manage that entire certification process. So one could say that our approach to recommending solutions kind of addresses 3 areas of focus or impact. First, we've got the financials. So what's the cost of doing business, and how can we help reduce those costs for our client? Secondly, how does a particular recommendation affect operations? And this is especially true when we're talking about waste and diversion programs. What kinds of equipment might be needed? How would this program affect labor? Are there space constraints? Things of that nature. These are the kinds of logistical questions that we have unique insight into given our position within waste management, and that can translate into a more effective and streamlined program for our clients. And then finally, from an environmental perspective, what are the associated environmental impacts of this proposed solution? And are there potential concerns from a compliance or liability perspective? So along with each of these areas of impact also comes a little bit of risk. So as we understand each impact, we are also concurrently setting up programs and systems to help mitigate any risks that may arise from each of those areas as well. And where we believe we excel here is in understanding all the positive and negative ways that waste can impact business, as I mentioned earlier, as well as the risks associated with those impacts. So we can help our clients be proactive and minimize both the risk and the negative impacts across these 3 areas. So in terms of our approach, we typically like to have a conversation with our client prior to starting work so that we create a scope of work that really caters to their specific needs and goals. While our approach typically involves the 4-step framework on the slide, it is really flexible to the needs and the scale of each client. We know from our experience that no 2 businesses are the same, even if they're working in the same industry and their operations appear to be the same. We know that each business has its own unique challenges and goals, so we prefer to have an introductory discussion with our client instead of just approaching them with an out-of-the-box solution that might not be the best fit for their needs. So just kind of going through the framework in a little more detail, we start with a discovery phase. We also call it data collection and assessment, or a diagnostic phase. And this is designed to help us learn about the client's goals and challenges, their current programs, and to discover options that might reduce their costs while improving their performance. So for example, if a retailer had a goal to improve their overall diversion by 15% in 2 years, our first step would be to understand the ins and outs of their particular operations, to gain context and understand the nuances of their business that could affect their goal or their achievement of that goal. We'd also collect historical performance data, at least as far as waste and recycling is concerned, to kind of understand where they've come from and where they're at. We'd also complete interviews and just generally discover as much as possible so that we understand the big picture for them and formulate an appropriate plan of attack. We then move into decision sciences and analytics. And in this phase, we take historical client data in waste management systems and run it through our business intelligence software or other analytical tools and look for performance trends, specific opportunities for new or improved programs, as well as cost savings. And this helps us to assess the feasibility of the client's sustainability goals or initiatives, which are often set in a vacuum without real knowledge of whether they're actually attainable or not. So this exercise kind of helps us level set expectations with the client and helps them revise their goals if necessary, either up or down, so that they're actually realistic and achievable. We then take the information obtained from the discovery phase and pair it with the outputs from the analytics phase to create an opportunity portfolio or a catalog of initiatives that the client can undertake to drive progress toward that goal. Proposed solutions might include new programs or different means to enhance or optimize existing programs, like training or signage, for example. And those are just examples. It could be pretty much anything. And we pair each of our proposed solutions with a cost-benefit analysis to make sure that the programs that we're proposing are sustainable on the financial side as well. And then finally, in the program design phase, we collaborate with the client to identify and prioritize opportunities and return on investment to help them make financial decisions about which opportunities they want to pursue. And after we gain their blessing, we develop a roadmap to help guide the process from start to finish and implement the selected programs on the necessary scale. So this process feeds back on itself based on results, so we can drive continuous improvement throughout an organization, and we can apply the same framework regardless of whether we're dealing with one site or 500, and yet still deliver a highly customized solution to our client. So as I said, each project scope is customized, but here we've got a few high-level examples of the work that we've done in the past, sort of grouped into buckets. So just starting on the left, we design assessments to help organizations obtain information based on particular key performance indicators that they want to understand. For example, we've designed assessment methodologies that help businesses understand the effectiveness of employee training programs and container strategies. And another example would be our work helping hotels and restaurants understand the differences in waste composition between their front of house and back of house operations. Recycling programs. We often get requests to design and implement effective conveyance and recycling programs for a wide variety of materials. In the case on the slide, we were working with a manufacturer that was being issued monthly charges for contamination in their plastics recycling stream to the tune of $250,000 US per year. We were able to help them create a 3-step program, including a decision tree, to help them reduce that contamination and In fact, the program worked so well that the recycling stream went from being a cost to a revenue stream. And at the end of the day, they were also left with a contamination reduction protocol that they could apply to all of their remaining recycling streams to make sure that they stayed clean. Training. A lot of times we come across clients that want to improve their diversion, but they don't really know where to start. And what we often find during the discovery phase is that there's a knowledge gap between the programs that exist at a facility and the people that are entrusted to execute those programs. We believe that in the end, the success of any program kind of depends on execution facilitated through robust training, and that's regardless of property type or industry type. So we've developed training programs across many industries or segments that can help clients implement a unified approach or process across all of their locations, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page with regard to goals and expectations and the different ways to maximize benefits from programs that are in place. We often find that if organizations dedicate time to training, that employees really do take ownership of their diversion programs and help drive continuous improvement of those programs. So it is a worthwhile endeavor for businesses to pursue. We tailor each program to the organization's unique operations, and we've delivered this training through a variety of platforms. For example, we've put together custom videos, playbooks, and pocket guides for some of our hospitality clients, delivered online training modules to healthcare clients, and also done more traditional in-person training at manufacturing facilities and some events that we've worked with. Compliance, helping you keep pace with regulations by assessing the effectiveness of current materials management programs and making sure that they align with applicable regulations. So we've helped retailers target hazardous materials or other materials of concern in their waste stream, which is of special interest to retailers in certain states like California, where fines are being imposed for improper disposal of these types of items. So when we're working with clients in this area, we basically have a diagnostic of the materials that they're currently sending to landfill, and then we combine that information with the development of appropriate compliance documentation, and that might include training logs and programs and other very targeted approaches to make sure that their staff keeps them in compliance and whether the juice is worth the squeeze. So this is an example of a project that we're currently working on in a little bit more depth. We were asked by one of our national retail customers to become their zero waste partner. Their goal is to become a zero waste organization by 2020, and they have a reputation for enacting various progressive environmental initiatives. So their previous waste hauler and service provider, as it turned out, was unable to provide them with the level of detail and transparency and the data, quite frankly, that they needed in order to make any progress toward that zero waste goal, which, being that it's a zero waste, obviously has the potential to touch every aspect of their operations. So our first task was to have a discussion about what the term zero waste means to them, because there is no universally accepted definition of what that actually is. So we wanted to understand, from their view, what is zero waste and what does success look like with regard to this goal. And after we had that discussion, our next step was to help them understand, what their waste stream composition actually looks like as a baseline, so that they can understand, what the current state of affairs is. We did this using a collaborative approach whereby we completed waste audits at a representative variety of their store formats, sizes, and geographic locations, as well as their distribution centers, just to understand, what the composition looked like across their fleet and among the different operations that the company undertakes. So since the goal for them was to be zero waste and to find a home for, or a diversion outlet for pretty much everything, it wasn't enough for us to just find out how much paper, plastic, and trash was in their waste stream. We also needed to find out what comprised that trash category, or identify both the types and volumes of the materials that wouldn't fit within the context of a traditional recycling program. In this exercise, we ended up sorting into more than 40 material categories in order to get them the granular level of detail necessary for them to take their diversion programs to the next level. The audits enabled us to identify their waste stream composition and to gain some insight as to their current levels of diversion. And that told us what was going into the waste stream, but it didn't tell us why, which is a critical thing to understand in order to make diversion improvements. So to learn more about that, we developed some standard questionnaires and completed interviews and focus groups at each of our audit locations to find out which programs were working well, where the pain points were, and to gather new ideas from the perspective of people that were actually in charge of executing on diversion within the organization. So coupling that quantitative and qualitative information enabled us to develop some meaningful data-driven recommendations prioritized according to the potential level of impact, which kind of brings us to our project outcomes to date. As I said, this is an ongoing initiative, so we haven't gotten them to zero waste yet, but so far we've been able to deliver zero waste workshops to their senior leadership, their sustainability team, and their associates to help them both define zero waste and to assess their programs and their progress in developing the corporate initiatives that are gonna help them get there, both up and down their value chain. Based on the recommendations that we outlined during that assessment and audit process, we're also supporting efforts to pilot new diversion initiatives at select stores to help identify and smooth out kinks in those pilots before the programs get rolled out to their wider portfolio of retail stores. And we're also employing technology to help improve the accuracy of their diversion calculations, which were previously estimated based on dumpster size and service level. Using this technology at the pilot stores is also helping to gauge both the quality and quantity of improvements being made as a direct result of implementing those pilot diversion programs I spoke about a moment earlier. As I mentioned, for them, going zero waste means finding diversion outlets for all of the materials that are being generated, even those that aren't traditionally thought of as recyclable. So we're continuing to look for solutions for all the materials that we observed in the waste stream during the assessment process, both upstream and downstream. With regard to upstream solutions, the client is working with their vendors and suppliers to make sure that all products and packaging fit with their zero waste ethos, and they're doing this by implementing sustainable purchasing guidelines that set minimum environmental and social standards for the products that it purchases and offers for sale. This minimizes the amount of waste going out the back door before it ever arrives through the front door. And downstream, our team is searching for innovative ways to divert materials that wouldn't fit within the context of a typical curbside recycling program. And we still have some work to do to identify outlets and programs for some of those more difficult to manage materials. So we're not there quite yet, but we've definitely helped this customer lay the groundwork that they need to achieve their zero waste aspirations. And here we have another case study involving a longer-term project that we completed at a quick-serve restaurant chain that operates in multiple countries. When this client initially approached us, their U.S. operations had been handed a waste diversion goal by their corporate headquarters. Their biggest problem was that they had no idea where to start or how far they had to go in order to achieve that corporate goal. And there were several matters further complicating the situation. starting with their business model. They use franchisees, as a lot of quick-serve restaurants do, but the use of franchisees or individual owner-operators rather than a centralized ownership structure kind of prevented the corporate hierarchy from forcing the franchisees to participate in diversion programs, because they do view them as individual business owners, and business owners are, in business to maximize their profits and reduce costs to the extent possible. And in some cases, recycling services are either just not available or they're more expensive than landfill rates in some areas. So to mandate the franchisees to recycle and bear those additional costs was kind of seen as out of bounds for corporate to tackle. Similarly, each franchisee is able to select their own waste and recycling providers, again, based on cost for that individual restaurant. So, each restaurant might have a different waste and recycling hauler. This means that for a large national chain, such as this client, there are many haulers for waste and recycling, which in turn presents huge challenges with regard to data collection and analysis. Another challenge with achieving that corporate diversion goal involved their packaging choices. As you can imagine, the primary function of fast food packaging is to protect the quality of the food while still presenting a minimal cost to make sure that that food item stays affordable. And since recyclable and compostable packaging, at least in the US, often tends to be more expensive, recyclability or diversion is not really a primary consideration, except in areas where it's mandated by law. So this means that most of their packaging needs to be disposed of as trash and can't be diverted from landfill. But as the saying goes, you can't manage what you don't measure. So to help them get started, we developed a plan to estimate their baseline diversion rate as well as their waste composition. Similar to the last case, this was with the goal of helping them understand where new programs were needed, along with which of their existing programs could be improved. So with the help of their real estate team, we profiled all of their U.S. restaurants according to what we saw as primary drivers of restaurant waste generation, and we proposed multiple assessments at each of those profiles to help them learn how composition and diversion might be impacted by factors like season, local menus, day of the week, etc. And by integrating the results of those assessments into our business intelligence tool and also just applying those results across their operations, we could approximate a baseline composition and diversion rate based on restaurant profile and the diversion programs that might be available in a given area. At the same time, we participated in a pilot to evaluate the effectiveness of various types of recycling messaging, under the assumption that customer-facing recycling might become more prevalent based on the results of the audits. We helped to devise mechanisms to measure different parameters that were seen as indicators of effective messaging. So the outcomes of this project not only helped the client establish a baseline diversion rate, albeit an estimate, to allow them to understand how much progress and effort was needed to achieve their corporate diversion goal, but completing those composition studies also helped guide them toward an enterprise-wide waste strategy, and that was to help them prioritize the materials and behaviors that needed to be addressed in order for that corporate goal to be achieved. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Waste Management Phoenix Open, which is an annual golf tournament taking place in February every year in Scottsdale, Arizona. The tournament is attended by professional athletes, celebrities, and the general public. And with over 600,000 people participating in this event, it is considered to be the largest golf tournament on the PGA Tour. This event also has an ongoing mission to be the greenest show on grass, addressing impacts including waste, but also energy and water usage, and also some potential social impacts as well. So in order to achieve that ambitious objective of being the greenest show on grass, planning and work on the WMPO is pretty much a year-round endeavor. We start by engaging vendors for the event to ensure that all materials brought onto the golf course are recyclable, compostable, or reusable. And we have them sign a Zero Waste Challenge participation agreement that includes requirements for all of the materials that they use. So, you know, just similar to the case on the slide previous, you know, if we can control the materials that are brought on site, we've got better control over the types of waste being produced, and we can ensure that each item that is produced can be diverted from landfill. At this event, there are no trash cans on the course, only compost and recycling bins. So to help make sure that things are entering the correct material disposal stream, we enlist an army of volunteer recycling ambassadors, and we position them at disposal stations to help visitors dispose of their waste materials in the appropriate bins. The waste management team also educates vendors as well as the volunteers about proper diversion on course. And we do sort materials collected all the way from the event setup in October through the removal of the final tournament materials in May. So there is some post-disposal sorting that's taking place just to make extra sure that you know, materials are ending up where they're supposed to. Going beyond waste, as I mentioned, we're addressing some other event impacts as well. We try to minimize our energy and water footprints, and this is especially important given the geographic location of the tournament in the desert Southwest. So with the extensive planning that we undertake, as well as the help of our operations teams and the engagement of our vendors, athletes, and spectators, we've been able to divert 100% of the waste produced at this tournament for a few years now from the landfill. So it's all diverted from landfill, and 10% of that total is incinerated with energy recovery. We've also implemented a solar array and purchased renewable energy credits such that 100% of the tournament's energy comes from renewable sources. And in addition to gray water initiatives that reuse cooking and cleaning water in the portable toilets for the event, we've also partnered with a campaign called Change the Course, and we've restored over 63 million gallons of water to the Colorado and Verde River watersheds just in 2016 alone. So given the success of that campaign, we have continued it every year since. And finally, we were able to have our efforts validated by third-party organizations in the form of UL Environment's Zero Waste to Landfill certification, as well as the Council for Responsible Sports Evergreen certification. And those certifications are the highest level of certifications offered by those certifying bodies. So as you can see, the projects we work on are pretty varied and customized and dependent upon the sustainability needs and goals of the client. We tend to focus on minimizing waste as well as associated financial, operational, and environmental impacts. And that's a little bit about our team and the work that we do. So thanks for the opportunity to speak with all of you today. And with that, I will turn it back over to Holly for Q&A.
Thank you, Leanne. Very informative. We have a wide range of questions here, and I will start with the most basic is, what does it mean to be zero waste?
Sure. As I mentioned, there's not really a universally accepted definition of that term. And in fact, the US EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, won't even define it. So it's up to each organization to decide for themselves what that means. But there are several third-party organizations or verifiers that offer certification of zero waste, which can add an extra level of credibility to a business's zero waste efforts. So I mentioned before UL Environment. It offers a certification to validate your business's diversion rates, if they're diverting less than 90% of their waste. And then they offer kind of a tiered zero waste to landfill certification, silver, gold, or platinum, for diversion rates between 90 and 100%. And another certifying body was formerly known as the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council. They offer a true zero waste certification, which is now administered by the U.S. Green Building Council, the same organization that administers LEED. And that organization follows Zero Waste International Alliance of Zero Waste, which states that at least 90% of waste must be diverted from landfill with nothing incinerated or burned. There's other definitions out there. Some start at 80%, some don't allow incineration at all, some don't allow anaerobic digestion, and there's even some companies that self-certify rather than adopt third-party definitions. So it's important that as a company, if you're looking to go zero waste, you decide which definition is most meaningful to you and act accordingly. And then from the other side, if you're looking to do business with a company because they're claiming to be zero waste, it's important to know exactly how that's being defined so that you're aware of the ins and outs of what that means in the particular circumstance.
Oh, thank you. That was enlightening. Can you talk a bit about the current state of the recycling markets?
Sure. There's a lot going on in recycling markets right now. The biggest buzz is the new policy being implemented by China. They were previously the U.S.'s biggest buyer of recycled commodities, so the paper and plastic and aluminum bales that come out of recycling sorting plants. They've decided to drastically increase quality requirements for bales being imported into China. The new rule is that 0.5% of any given bale can now consist of trash or contamination, or else that bale is rejected and goes to landfill. And just for reference, bales coming out of the States routinely have contamination levels of 25%. So this means that U.S. markets are scrambling to reduce the amount of contamination, find other markets to sell to, and establish domestic markets that currently don't really exist. And so the effects of that include reductions in rebates that we're able to offer, additional processing fees, and in some cases the elimination of some materials from being able to be recycled in the first place, like types of plastic or glass. I recently read an article from the New York Times that reported that while some bigger haulers are kind of stressed by the policy, like Waste Management and Republic Services are kind of stressed out by it, there are some smaller processors that are ending up having to send bales of recyclables to the landfill because there's just no place else for them to go. So for our part, we're finding buyers in other countries like India and Vietnam, and we're also working with more domestic processors. But the heart of the issue is really contamination rates. So we're putting renewed focus on educating consumers on the types of materials that they can put in the bin and the importance of making sure that those materials are clean. So if anyone is interested in learning more, we do have a public-facing website up. It's called recycleoftenrecycledright.com, and that kind of goes into a little bit more detail on the current policies and things that the consumer can do to make sure that the recycling stream stays clean and viable.
Thank you, Leanne. One question that kind of stems off that is, this is interesting, Leanne, someone says, is any of your sorting automated, and what types of sorting are automated?
Sure. A lot of our sorting is automated. We have kind of air current. So if you think about, a mixed load of single stream or commingled recycling coming into a separation facility, we kind of have different means for separating out those different materials. So first we've got kind of air currents that kind of blow off all the paper and some of the cardboard that might be in there. We have magnets to help capture kind of steel cans and things like that. We've got something called eddy currents or kind of reverse magnets, and those kind of help capture aluminum cans. And then there's some different technologies in place to help sort plastics. So some facilities will have kind of an electronic eye that can distinguish different plastic resin types, whether that be number 1 PET, number 2 HDPE, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are some facilities that do not have that technology, and they rely purely on manual sorters, so people basically looking for shapes instead of numbers on the bottoms of containers. As you imagine, these conveyor belts are whizzing by people at crazy speeds, to be honest. And so they don't really have a lot of time to pick up each container to look at a number and sort it appropriately. So it can be somewhat challenging at plants where there isn't automated sorting technology, and you're kind of really relying on that manual labor component to get things sorted into the right place. And even where there is manual or automated sorting technology, there is still a human component to make sure that there are no contaminants entering that stream.
Okay.
So, the more contamination you have going down a line, the more labor that it's going to require to remove that contamination.
Mm-hmm. Someone says the range of solutions that waste management provides is impressive, but how does waste management sustainability services partner with smaller, more specialized sustainability consultancies?
Well, we've definitely got, there are definitely synergies that can be achieved by working with a smaller consulting group. We do have folks kind of scattered throughout the country, but there are areas of the country where we don't necessarily have boots on the ground. And in those areas, we've partnered with smaller consulting firms in the past just to, be able to get eyes on a particular client. And, as I said, we kind of specialize in we're a little bit more waste focused, given that we are waste management.
And what is the biggest obstacle to a successful recycling program that you see?
I think that the biggest obstacle is really twofold. I mentioned training and also accountability. So beginning with training, it's really a facility's staff that's going to make or break any recycling or diversion program that's put in place. And if the staff doesn't know or understand what's being expected of them, they can't know that diversion is a priority for their company and behave accordingly. And they certainly can't give recommendations on how to improve. And a lot of times we hear that recycling or diversion training is offered during new hire orientation and that's it. Or, there might be a resource out there on the company internal website if people know how to find it. And that's just, it's not enough, to be honest. If a company's decided that recycling and diversion is a priority for them, they need to make that known to their staff through a thorough training program, and that training needs to be repeated or refreshed regularly so that diversion kind of becomes a habit rather than something extra that they need to think about once in a while. So, like I said, we often find that a well-trained staff that understands their workplace's diversion programs really want to lead the charge on making it successful. But we also understand that there's always going to be some folks that just won't participate because they either don't care or because of perception that they don't have time or any other factor. And so for that reason, there is some level of accountability that needs to be established so that each staff member understands that diversion it's part of their job responsibility and not kind of, a nice to have or extra behavior. So, you can either go the carrot or the stick route. We're kind of advocates of the carrot approach, kind of just offering something extra or recognition for a job well done, and that kind of establishes more of a culture of diversion among the staff themselves, and they'll be more likely to police themselves, which then reduces the need to kind of, issue top-down reprimands, if you will.
Uh-huh. And outside of recycling, what can different facilities do to improve their diversion?
So as I alluded to in the presentation, we think that one of the best ways to control what's going out the back door is to pay attention to what's coming in the front door. So rather than prioritizing diversion, it can be even more impactful to prioritize waste minimization. If you take switching from paper towels to an electric hand dryer as an example, if you can make that switch, not only are you not having to worry about how to divert all these used paper towels, but you're also ending up with cost savings on multiple fronts. First, the cost of purchasing the new towels. Secondly, the labor associated with replacing towel rolls and collecting trash. And then finally, the cost associated with disposing of that trash. Another way to minimize waste is to talk to your vendors. You can try to establish policies with regard to materials and packaging that they use, or try to convince them to take those materials back so you don't have to dispose of them. And establishing that dialogue not only helps your facility, but it also helps establish market demand for more responsible products and packaging materials, so that it eventually becomes more of the norm rather than a special request. And then, finally, apart from minimization, recycling, one of the largest components of a waste stream is often organic material or food waste. So, while there's some great initiatives that people can undertake to minimize that component of their waste stream, one sure way to be able to divert all of it is to start a food waste collection program, because food rotting in a landfill produces methane. It's over 20 times as potent a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide, and so eliminating that from the landfill produces a great environmental benefit. It can also help contribute to cleaning up your recycling stream, since a lot of contamination often comes in the form of food waste. And over the long term, it can reduce disposal costs in some areas, because landfill rates are projected to become more expensive as time goes on.
Okay, and coming off of that, someone asks, do you do any collection of waste cooking oil for fuels?
I do not believe that we do that. I'm not sure that waste management does that, but I know that we do work with third-party vendors that are in the business of taking cooking oil and changing it into biofuel for use. We do collect our landfill gas and turn that into compressed natural gas that we use to power a lot of our trash collection vehicle fleet. So we are taking, we are in the business of renewable fuel in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Let me see. Someone asks why some don't allow anaerobic digestion?
I think that the reasoning for not allowing that as part of the zero waste diversion, it kind of depends on the facility. I guess there are some anaerobic digesters that end up with kind of a sludge that does, in some cases, end up going to landfill. And so, for that reason, there are some bodies that would not consider anaerobic digestion a form of diversion, because there is a component of it that's still ending up in the ground.
Okay. And then I see someone who says diversion opportunities differ depending on geographic location. What can companies with sites in multiple cities or states do to implement consistent company-wide efforts?
Sure. So it's important that each of their sites understand local requirements. For example, organics bans are in effect in several states, and there are recycling laws and legislation in place in a lot of other locations. So the first thing would be to make sure that each of your sites are following those requirements as applicable. Another thing that can help is to track all of your waste and diversion for all of your sites in one place. For example, many of our national customers see a lot of value in using our business intelligence platform so that they can see all of their data in one place, and that way they can spot trends and opportunities and best practices that can be shared across their sites or regions. Another nice thing about working with a larger provider like Waste Management is that we can set up one national account management team for all the sites that a business is operating, so that you've got one point of contact that has a really good understanding of your needs and your operations. And from a top-down perspective, it's crucial to establish an overall strategy or policy that applies to all your sites regardless of their location. And that kind of helps to establish guiding principles and an ethos or culture that everyone can kind of look to as their North Star when they're facing different challenges or business decisions, even if there's not, a specific policy in place for their particular situation. And then from there, you can implement additional tools and training at the corporate or national level to establish kind of a consistent look and feel across all your sites, while still leaving a little bit of wiggle room for customization according to the specifics of programs that might be available at each location.
Mm-hmm. Someone wonders, what is the most challenging project you've been involved with?
Oh boy. I think like some of our food and retail customers present a lot of challenges. In particular, actually the quick serve restaurant case that I mentioned is probably one of the more challenging ones for me. Just given, I can't even find the words. There's just so many differences. Like it was just such a big brand, and they had so many locations and so many sources of information and so many points of contact. It just made it, information gathering very, very difficult. And one of the things that people don't necessarily think about until they're on my side of things, sitting where I sit, a lot of, smaller retailers that use dumpsters, in particular, they're very interested in diversion and tonnage, how much trash am I producing, how much recycling am I producing. But the challenge with that is that, those dumpsters don't get weighed. They just get tipped into the back of, something that looks like a residential trash collection truck. And so it can be very, very difficult for us to, get clients that level of data when we don't have actual weights available. There's things that we can do to kind of convert, volume to weight and things like that. But at the end of the day, it is, it's still an estimate. And while we can refine those to a degree, it can present a big challenge if clients don't, quite understand some of the intricacies associated with that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I would encourage anybody that has more questions to email Leanne here. Her email address is up on our screen here. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and it's such an interesting presentation. And this will be recorded and hopefully up within a week for those who would like to share it. So thank you again, Leanne, and everyone else for your questions.
Thanks, Holly. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
You're welcome. I'm going to end this meeting now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.